So I just got this in the mail today, and when I tell you, you will have to rip this off of my cold, dead body because I'm never taking it off. I'm like 75% not kidding. This is from Tomboy X. Narwhal Nation on Discord told me about, they have like really cute bralettes and everything, and I'm pretty much totally on board, and I'm never not buying from them again. I'm going to live in this. Hi guys. So today I wanted to do a kind of get ready with me / update talking about therapy. So for all of you that do not know, I have been on and off in therapy for probably 1.5 years, but completely in therapy with the same therapist for almost a year now. So I wanted to kind of do like a little update while I did my makeup. I'm starting with this Tatcha, the liquid silk canvas. I recently got some stuff from Tatcha and I've been wanting to like see what all the hype is about. So we're starting with that. But yeah, so I've been in therapy. I believe I started in like 2019 in a very kicking and screaming kind of way. I definitely had been in the I have nothing against therapy, but I don't need therapy boat for a while. As a lot of you know, when after I had Violet, I had really bad postpartum depression that lasted for a very long time before I actually went to a psychiatrist and got on medication. And then the medication aspect was a big up and down roller coaster, but we're finally seeing like a light at the end of the tunnel. Something that I definitely, okay, so I'm using the Anastasia Luminous Foundation now as well. And then I have Auric Glow Lust that I'm gonna put a tiny bit of in as well. These two mixed are really pretty. So anyway, so I had pretty much not done the therapy route because my whole life had been basically in that boat of you don't need therapy. Therapy is for people who have like actual mental illness, yada, yada, yada. I know that this is not the right type of thought process, but just being honest, that's where I was at. It wasn't until the end, I believe the end of 2019, that I was in some argument with Paul, and he's like, you need to do this. You have to do this for our marriage. You need to go to therapy. Therapy, obviously they're not on the same level, but now, like looking back, therapy is very much like rehab, in the sense that if you don't want to go and you're not willing to put the work in and look in yourself, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to actually, you're not going to get as much out of it unless you are open to it. If somebody's going against their will, or they're like, fine, I'm going to go because this person wants me to, they're not going to get the same amount out of it as if they would when it's their actual choice and they recognize that there's something wrong and they want to get better. And that's really where therapy is as well. My hair is at this length where like I'm just so frustrated with it, but I want it to grow, so I don't want to cut it. Like, rah. So when I first started going, it was a lot of first of all, I didn't get matched up with a therapist that I really liked. I got matched up with one that was not really giving me what I needed. I needed somebody who was going to question me and like basically bounce the tennis ball back, if that makes sense. I need someone who's gonna be like, wow, that's a big statement, or wow, that's shame, that's this. And the therapist that I had was very much just like, well, have you tried it didn't feel like a conversation back and forth. It felt like somebody who was just listening to my crap because they got paid. Because that was my first experience with therapy, it was definitely immediately like what's the point? And this was not great because I wasn't going. I was pretending I was. It's very much, the more I think about it, like the more I talk about it, it really is like rehab. I was lying, saying I was going to therapy. I was pretending like I was getting better. I was hiding it, and that's shitty. It's really shitty. This is the Fenty Beauty eye brightener. That's what I was looking for. So after a while, I just stopped going. Finally told Paul I wasn't going. He was upset, obviously. Really didn't see myself getting much out of it. And it wasn't until maybe, I feel like I stopped going in like February or March of last year. And then I started going again in June of 2020. on top of already feeling like crap, already feeling super burnt out with YouTube, already not wanting to do anything, the panini hit. And it was like, one, it was an excuse to just give up entirely for me. Two, it just made me really realize that, like, okay, mental health on a global scale is a real issue. Maybe I should stop acting like I need to be like super, super unwell to talk to a therapist. Finally started going there. I remember my first session with my therapist that I still have. It was something about body shame and how unhappy I was in my body and how sad it made me trying on clothes, how all of this stuff. And one of the first things that she said was, wow, that sounds like a lot of shame. And you sound like you're shaming yourself a lot. And it really kind of, first of all, was like a punch in the stomach, because I was like, I don't think anyone's ever told me the emotion that I'm feeling, like gave it a name. Because I wasn't like, I feel like I'm shaming myself. Like I've never really thought that. And I remember like just that first session was like, oh my gosh, this girl understands me, first of all. And she actually is giving me like a back and forth that's going to help me to have to face stuff. Since then, I have gone up until March of this year, maybe a little bit farther back. I had been going weekly to see her and talk to her. And, you know, a lot of the time it was me being like, what do I need to talk about? Really getting in my head with like thinking I needed to have things to talk about and like worrying that I was gonna bore her, worrying so much about how she felt. As time went on with my same therapist, I realized how much I was getting out of this, not only for myself, but how much I could look at other people and see how it could benefit them. Even if it's something as simple as learning what triggers you, like in an argument, or how you argue, or your strengths and weaknesses. Like you just start to notice things that you don't notice initially. And I'm saying this in the sense that like you need like a third party to be able to see this stuff. So for example, when Paul and I get into arguments, I don't recognize how stubborn I get. I don't recognize that I focus in on like whatever the problem is right then and not the bigger picture of like the whole issue. So like if we're getting in an argument about, I can't even think of anything off the top of my head. Isn't that weird how that happens? Like you could think of all the stuff in the argument, but when you're not fighting, you're like, oh, I don't even know what the problem is. Okay, so what did I use before? I used the Matchstick from Fenty for my contour, and now I'm using the Foolproof Brow Powder from Benefit, which is like the only brow product I've used in a really long time. I don't know why, I really like this one. But anyways, so the things that I've really gotten out of therapy, it's interesting how much we block off the reasons that we act certain ways and the reason we take certain criticism or we take certain information. And it's really like fascinating to me to see, to be able to connect the dots on why we do certain things, why we act certain ways. And it's something that is very hard to do unless you are allowing yourself to be open to it. My family is very proud. Therapy was never something that was talked about in my family. My last boyfriend, my ex-boyfriend, was very, very, very depressed, and I was very much the type of person that was like, oh, you know, just like go do something happy, or go take a walk, or go do something. Like I was one of those people. Every time I think about it, I like cringe because it's not how it works at all. And the main thing that I have realized in my year of therapy is that, okay, so this is the Kimchi concealer, by the way. I realize I keep forgetting to tell you guys what I'm doing. The main thing that I've realized is that it does not matter if you have been through something like horrifically traumatic. We all have been through things that if we compare them to other people, they might not seem like big deals, but everything impacts us all differently. So something, you know, maybe you know somebody that went through something really traumatic in their childhood and you discount yourself and your experiences because, well, I didn't have it that bad, or it wasn't like that. That is the worst thing you could possibly do. And that's really the biggest thing that I've noticed or realized, because when I think about it on a surface level and just even in general, I had a really great childhood. I had loving parents, we had a nice house, we had money, we had food, everything was fine. But when you start really looking at the pieces of it, you notice that small things that seem insignificant when you look at them on a big picture, can end up becoming like a ball of yarn. It's just this tiny little bean, right? Just this little thing. But the way trauma works is that little bean, as you grow up, gets more and more yarn attached to it. Spin bigger, bigger, bigger. And then you're left with this chunk, this giant thing that you are ignoring or you're, putting to the side because you think it's not a big deal. A couple months ago, I had this happen to me where it was this thing that was not really a big deal, or at least I never thought it was a big deal. And it really, I don't want to go into specifics, but like in the big scheme of things, when I think of other people's trauma and I think of other things that people have gone through, really not a big deal. That I realized through a lot of connecting the dots that this was something that was impacting me and a big part of my life very, very significantly. And I had to deal with it. I had to recognize it. I had to unravel it. I had to really basically start from scratch on this part of my life. The fact that I was able to figure it out and get through it has been a big change and has been like a really positive change for me. So the biggest thing is just you have to be open to it. You have to be open to talking about things, to thinking about things that have happened to you, even if you think they're not a big deal, even if it seems insignificant. Everything seems to stem from childhood. I remember I was talking to someone about this not that long ago. Okay, so wait, before I keep going. This is the Pixie On The Glow blush and the ColourPop Malibu Barbie Beach Party highlighter. But that was like a satisfying sound. Pop. So I was talking to somebody recently about this, about how the way that we act and the trauma that we have, a lot of it stems from things that seem so small in our childhood. For example, somebody might have kicked a ball and it got run over by a car. And something that small can end up impacting the way that they process things, the way that they react to things. When I was little, I was at a garage sale with my mom and this ambulance went by and the sirens went off and this dog that was there, this tiny dog, jumped up and bit my hand. And I was terrified of dogs until I started dating Paul and he had his dog Leia. That was how many years ago? 8 years ago. So until 8 years ago, I was terrified of dogs. So that one obviously makes a little bit more sense, but there's the smallest things. I was telling Paul this earlier too, how I remember when I was in high school, I remember hearing this one kid talk about how, this was I guess when thongs were really the thing, but he was talking about how regular underwear can be fine on girls unless it's too big and it sags in the back or something like that. So since then, I've always had this thought in my head that you have to wear underwear that's way too tight, otherwise it's wrong or something, which is ridiculous, so ridiculous. But we get these tiny little things, we hear these tiny things from different people and we grab onto them, even if we don't mean to grab onto them. And those things can be really hard to shake, but the best thing you can do, the most helpful thing is going back, thinking about these things and really questioning, why do I act this way? Where is this coming from? That's a pretty color. Okay, so this is Kimchi Diamond Charts. This one is in my stage. I don't want to do anything a lot, I feel like I'm wearing a lot, so that kind of makes sense. But yeah, so I guess the main thing I want to say in this is I really, truly, honestly feel like therapy is something that everybody should do. This should be something that is not shamed. It should absolutely be something that is celebrated. I don't care if you think you have nothing to work through. I think that even if it's just to learn how to communicate better, it is so helpful. I mean, this is something that I've talked to Paul a lot about when it comes to Violet, because both Paul and I had adolescence, teenage years where I didn't talk to my parents. I didn't want to talk to them. I was very secretive and didn't have the best relationship with them when I was growing up. We've realized, the biggest reason for all of that is communication and making sure that with Violet, we talk with her regularly, and we make sure that she knows that she can talk to us about anything and we're not going to judge her or shame her or anything like that. I've also had to accept that no matter what I do, no matter how good of a parent I try and be, Violet will have trauma. Whether it's from me, whether it's from something I said to her, whether it's from something Paul said, whether it's from an external source, a lot of the times it's not on purpose. It could be something that somebody said to you a long time ago, and if you brought it up to them now, they would not even remember saying it. They would not even remember saying the thing that you've held on to. I'm not saying every time, but a lot of the time, trauma is not necessarily the other person's fault. My trauma, I would absolutely never, ever, ever blame my parents for or anybody else for. Like I said, it's that tiny little bean, and then I'm the one who wrapped the yarn over it and made it into a big thing. So with Violet, the main thing that we're just trying to do is make sure that we're always talking to her about what's going on in school, how she feels about stuff, and trying to really work through it, and just keeping that line of communication open, because I know once she gets older, once she's like a teenager, it gets harder. And I want her to know, if she's ever in trouble or if anything's ever happening, that she can come to us and that we can talk to her and not judge her and keep things open. I'm very glad that therapy and mental health, especially after the last year, has become a lot more, I don't want to say mainstream, but more talked about. It's like I saw someone recently who said that, you go to the doctor to make sure, like, your wellness, you do wellness checkups, you should be doing the same thing with your brain. And it's so true. And I'm really glad that I am finally on that side of the coin, because I've realized being too proud to do stuff, being too proud to ask for help, to have somebody to talk to that's not biased. We've had so much crap going on with our house and selling our house. I will definitely be doing a video once it's all done, said and done, and I could actually talk about the absolute chaos that this last month and a half has been. I had a whole session with my therapist a week ago. 90% of it was just me unloading. Like, she barely even said anything. She was like, wow, that sounds hard. Wow, that's rough. That was pretty much the whole thing. But I just needed someone to talk to that was going to listen without giving me what I wanted to hear, basically. Obviously, having a good therapist and finding someone that you mesh well with, I feel like that's the hardest part, because that can be very, very frustrating. Having to start over like every time, I can't even imagine. But in general, I just wanted to make this because I just wanted to give my experience with it, because I totally get therapy being something that sounds like it's more than you need. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're not to that level of crazy. I say that as like, this is what past Leesha would think. Like, I don't need it because I have this. I don't need it because I have friends I talk to. I talk with this person. I do this. It's not about that. I recommend it to everybody. It should be free. I could get on that all day, but I just wanted to do a check-in because I think that it's something that's super important and has made a huge difference in my life, how I accept things, being able to let go, being able to just like stop overthinking things. It's just made a really big difference, and I want that for anyone who needs it. So thank you for listening to me ramble on about everything for the last however long, and I'll see you guys soon.